Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Artificial Intelligence panel presented by the Milwaukee Tech Hub Coalition. Um, Without any further ado, we're going to jump right into it and introduce our panelists. Sebastian, if you want to start first, and then we'll go down the line. Just tell us where you're going to school and what your major is and what you're looking to do to further your career.
So hi, everyone. My name is Sebastian Acaiturri. I'm from Guayaquil, Ecuador. I'm currently a senior at the College of Business Administration, majoring in Marketing and Information Systems. I will graduate this December, and I'm searching for any opportunities that will let me implement my skills, values, and perspective, as well as personal professional growth.
Hi, my name is Valencia Caldwell. I am from Cardinal Stritch University. I have a master's in education, and as a 7th and 8th grade math teacher, my hope is to really infuse technology into my classroom and really bridge that gap between STEM and education.
My name is Carmen Henry. I am a student at UW-Milwaukee. I am currently majoring in mathematics, pursuing a bachelor's. I'm currently doing some data strategy work, but I'd love to pivot into data analytics, either before graduation or after graduation.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Next, we're going to just jump right into the questions. Carmen, I have the first question for you. If you'd be willing, could you share a use case of how AI might disrupt the career that you're looking into?
Yeah, I would say AI and data analytics, it's fairly common. AI can be used to quickly identify patterns in large sets of data, and it can save precious time for engineers, analysts, data scientists. But I do find myself interested in the field of people analytics, so I can see how AI can actually disrupt that field in like HR roles, but it's definitely still a work in progress due to understandable concerns about bias and everything. So I'd love to see how the hybrid of human and AI-driven insights could at least add some insights to the field while causing a little bit of disruption.
Thank you. That was a great point. Bouncing off of that, anybody's welcome to chime in on this. Let's talk about what steps that could be taken to mitigate bias in, for example, people in HR and things like that. Anybody have any thoughts on that? If nobody does, we'll just go back to you, Carmen.
I would absolutely say to at least offset some of that bias is have a robust team, multiple roles, multiple departments, have a nice set of people who are into the humanities, since the machines learn by finding patterns that from the data that humans give. We need to have like at least a solid team to give a better data set for better algorithms.
That's a really good point. Continuing on that, talking about just AI in general, you said a little bit mentioned about the humanities. The biggest thing that we've talked about over our past summer working with the Tech Hub and doing our pre-internship was roles that might not be technical roles that are involved in artificial intelligence. Sebastian, if you want to talk about what opportunities might exist on teams like that aren't necessarily as technical.
Yeah, so talking about like other roles and disciplines that are important in the creation of AI solutions, I think that the main ones could be computer science, which have to be with programming and data management, and also psychology and philosophy, which has to be with interaction, part of the machine learning process and the user. But I think that it's also important to have like this creative role integrated to any AI solutions teams. But it also depends on what AI solutions we are talking about, because if you are working for a healthcare solution, you might want to include a healthcare professional. So in other words, it's important to involve professionals of the topics that you are working for.
That's a great point, Sebastian. Thank you for that. Going to you, Valencia, we just talked about how there are some potentially non-traditional roles that people may not think about in the world of AI development. As a teacher, do you think that the kids that you're teaching their age, are they aware that there are these options out there, or is there stuff that we need to do to push that more?
I think there's definitely a group of students that are aware of what's happening. When we even talk about like culture and biases that are already in our systems that are at large, But I also think that there is a forge that needs to happen with our like state level that is really going to push our students to recognize that they are important. I think part of that development was the Wisconsin state standards that is happening around computer science and navigating that in the education field, but making sure that educators are equipped to be able to teach our students that as well.
Awesome. Going, talking a little more into how the students feel and where they are right now. I would like to talk a little bit about bias. Do you think that students per se, the group of students that are aware of what's out there, do you think they have an understanding of the potential dangers of AI and the bias that could surround it, or is that something that needs to be more focused on?
I think that students are always open to having those conversations when they're aware and they're in a safe space to have those conversations. When it comes to AI and the biases that are already there, some of it is arbitrary in the sense that like they don't know what they don't know, and giving them the exposure is going to allow them to actually dig deep and ask those questions to figure out where it really came from and how it can be changed in the future.
That's a great point. Thank you. Continuing to go off of that, talking more about education, I'd like to talk about our education. This is a question for everybody, so we can just start at Sebastian and go down the line. Do you feel that your current major, your past major is preparing you for the direction that the tech industry is currently going? And if not, what steps would you like to take or have you taken to prepare yourself effectively?
So I do think that Marquette is doing a great job educating students and preparing them to these changes, not just on the academic, but also the values and skills that they educate students with. I think that my double major in marketing information systems is giving me a great insight and fundamentals to understand how business works in those areas. But however, like after graduating, it's up to me to keep my learning habits and inform myself about improvements and updates of the market in general. And that's why I decided to apply to the Milwaukee Tech Hub pre-internship program and learn more about AI and data management. But I will look for more courses available regarding AI, programming, I don't know, user experience, and more to keep educating myself and be able to confront any future changes.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Valencia, I'd love to hear from you on this as well, and Carmen.
My apologies for that. Will you go ahead and say that one more time for me?
Oh, absolutely. No issue. So we're just talking about how do you feel that your past major has prepared you for the way that, especially in your situation, tech education? And if not, what ways could you supplement your education, or have you supplemented your education to continue to push yourself in the right direction?
When it comes to education, I think that sometimes we are left out of the scope of how technology is truly used. They work almost separately in a way that they should be merging. And I think that that's part of the hope. And I think that's also why I joined the program. Right now, I've done a lot of learning on my own as to like building different languages so that I could at least understand coding. And I think coding is the premises of a lot of computer science in general. And so how do we get them attached to our students, excited to learn coding in knowing that it is a different language in a way that is also going to enhance them in wanting to stay in these fields. But as overall, I'm not sure that I would say that data is really a part of education in the ways that it should be. There's we use data in instruction, but it's a different type of data that is being used to push that. But I see data in AI really disrupting it in our data and data-led instruction.
That's really interesting. If you could expand on that a little bit, I'd love to hear more on data-led instruction.
So mainly our education system and not even just the education system. When we're in the classroom, we're gathering information from our students daily. Like, what do you know? What don't you know? Assessments, that nature. And with us just going into the pandemic, a lot of our instruction changed onto technology. And so seeing data differently allows us to really push our instruction further. So we can say 50% of our class either obtained that knowledge or they didn't. But also there are programs in education that are being used to navigate where a student is and what problems they're going to get next based off of how they answered the questions prior. And so that's where I really see it happening, but gathering that data so that the teacher can see it too is going to be the next step.
Awesome, that's very insightful. Thank you for that. Back to our original question, Carmen, if you'd like to tell us about how prepared you feel because of your major, and if not, what steps you have taken to get more education.
Yeah, so I have a little bit of an odd case because I did switch majors and I took an 8-year break from UWM. So just coming into the field, I don't think that I'm adequately prepared from my coursework itself. I would say my math department has done an excellent job of attempting to prepare me. My math advisor at UWM actually was one of the people that sent me the link to the MKE Tech Coalition pre-internship. So that's been great. But other than that, I've been mainly teaching myself and learning how, I suppose, the mathematical functions that I am learning are indirectly used in some of these programs. But I haven't learned anything directly from AI or about AI from my coursework. And that's why I've been supplementing things, including this program, courses from Coursera, LinkedIn, to fill in those gaps.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, it's a great point to talk about other online educational tools. They can always be super helpful, and a lot of them are free as well, so that's always great. I'd like to talk a little bit about the program that we did this summer and how that helped us supplement our education. Carmen, if we could start with you again and just talk about what was your biggest takeaway from the program specifically?
I would say actually the non-technical parts were the biggest takeaway. Getting a valuable experience with networking, connecting with other people, and just learning tips with how to interview and how to take the knowledge that I've learned about AI and data and infuse that into conversations every day and even on the job.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a great point. I think that was probably the most helpful point for me as well. But another thing that I'd love to highlight from the program is we talked a lot about bias and how to mitigate unintentional bias. Valencia, if you'd like to talk a little bit about what we talked about then and things that you've learned as well about mitigating bias specifically in methods.
I think the most important part is making sure that you have diversity amongst the people that are building the programs. And not to say that's going to combat biases altogether. I do think that it's going to navigate in a way that we are putting people in humanities center, though.
Awesome, thank you. Sebastian, I'd love to hear your take on this as well.
Yeah, I mean, after being part of the program, I think that I learned also like the importance of every industry into the AI. And in order to mitigate bias, I think it's really important to have a different perspectives and diversity, not just on the group working on the solution, but also on the data. And yeah, like we all are aware of all the bias that is in technology. So AI development teams should take into consideration a diverse group of people into a team.
Awesome, thank you for that. Yeah, so like as we just talked about, bias can be mitigated in a whole bunch of ways, whether it be through sourcing the data, structuring the data, as well as the algorithms that you're putting the data into. I'd love to talk about sourcing data and how we can mitigate bias from our sources. If anybody has a use case that they'd like to share about data collection where the data may have not been as clean as they thought, that would be wonderful. Otherwise, Sebastian, I'd love to hear your take on this again as well.
So an example about like a problem that a system had with bias, I think like this year Twitter faced an implicit bias issue in a photo cropping system. The system seemed to have bias over or towards young and light skin faces over the rest. So this create bias for people of color, age, and gender. So what we really need to migrate bias is diversity, not just in data, but also in the processes and the members of the solutions teams.
It's a great point. Thank you. Does anybody else have any other comments they'd like to share on that topic? All right, well, then we're going to wrap up with our final question here. We've talked a lot about the industry now, where education is now and where it's going in the future. I'd like to go down the line one more time and just get a brief statement from you guys on what the biggest thing that we need to be prepared for in the future of AI and what that is specifically. So hate to call on you so much, Sebastian, but I'd love to start with you again.
That's okay. So this is a hard one, as we never know like what the futures hold us for. But I mean, AI is the present, but also the future. So we need to be aware of our surroundings and to be prepared as well to educate ourselves about improvements in the technology field. I think that some things that changed everything was COVID-19. The other day I was reading a Forbes article about 5 digital marketing trends in 2021, and it stated that remote working and hybrid events are here to stay, as well as supporting AI is becoming essential. So the pandemic changed how business operates, and some services become completely online, and AI helped businesses also in several ways to create systems and make more efficient processes.
Thank you for that. Carmen, I'd be really interested to hear on a final note how you feel that the direction that or changes that you see in data analytics specifically in the future.
I'm thinking on a more indirect term, just thinking about, I suppose, both data analytics and AI as far as the topic of privacy. In media, often I see a lot of hesitation around these subjects and fear. So I think what I'm predicting to see both in the present and the future, there's going to be a lot of language shifting and culture shift with how we take care to talk about these things, and even the legal aspect of things, probably creation of laws or a set of laws that will pretty much guide every field, especially tech, with how we approach these subjects in the future.
Awesome, thank you. That's a great point. Well, unfortunately, we're just out of time right now. I want to thank everybody who was on our panel for speaking and sharing. And I'd love to thank everybody else who was watching and interacting with us at the booth. Thank you so much.